Hogwarts Legacy, a magical world that I made look absolutely terrible on my PC. I mean, look at this tree. Amazing. This was quite an interesting open world RPG that didn't have too much to do as I would expect in this genre. It's quite modest in its offerings and focuses on the world building and player exploration of locations from the books and movies. Overall, the package of Hogwarts Legacy was mediocre for me, but mediocre is not negative at all. I mean, shit, otherwise I wouldn't have completed this. You don't want to know how long I spent finding this unicorn, okay? So let's break it down into the, same three categories. The game's story is by far my highest negative that affects all other aspects of the game. The story is sequence related, where you will progress the main story, which will branch off into multiple parts such as helping Lockback, Sebastian, Natsai, or Poppy, and then eventually getting to one of the Keeper trials. I think I understand what the developers were trying to do here, which was to create a narrative where you're traveling all across the Highlands helping NPCs and gaining new friends that will all eventually help you with your fight against Ranrock. However, how it felt for me was that every character that I encountered felt insignificant and unimportant after I completed our interaction because they would just never appear again. And if they do, it's either because it's Sebastian, Natsai, or Poppy who are the main side arc characters of the game. The story itself doesn't elaborate on many of the key characters either, besides this guy. Professor Fig, the Keepers, and even Isidora, who is supposed to be a foil for the protagonist, was not someone that I cared for, and even the antagonist factions of the Ashwinders and the Loyalists felt insignificant due to how they would only show up every now and then, and it was always just trash mobs. It would have been more insightful and impactful if we learned about Ranrock's backstory, for instance, from himself, or maybe Rookwood, who they didn't do anything with despite being a descendant of one of the Keepers. I didn't read every note and lore text in the game, but it would have been nice for the game to explain to me why I can see and manipulate ancient magic. This is more of a mixed criticism for me, since I get that your character is supposed to be a full RP that has no backstory or pre-existing connection to the story. I guess I just found the Keepers even not knowing or explaining how you can see ancient magic as strange, since Rackham himself doesn't explain how he came into that power. Speaking of strange, I don't actually have anything else to say about the story. It wasn't memorable for me, but the world is beautiful, and you can tell that the devs really nailed the atmosphere of the lore through the field guide pages. So this section is going to be hilariously short because it's only Sebastian. I know Natsai and Poppy are both other relevant characters, but I just didn't feel an impact in their respective arcs. Also, if you remember how I mentioned how the story being bad impacted all other aspects of the game, well, characters is no exception. There are many classmates that you have at Hogwarts, and yet I can't recall half of them besides the ones I pissed off or the ones I lost Summoner's game to, which I guess left some sort of impression. The professors actually have more screen time than the students, given they at least show up during the final battle and you can talk to them in their classes about how they got into teaching. Then there's Professor Fig, who doesn't teach us anything, but he's a character that exists. I found it amusing that he only really is impactful by giving us the poly potions so that we can access the third trial. Oh, and how did he die after we defeated Ranrock? Did he get a heart attack from all the excitement? I mean, it was a cool boss fight. Finally, and the only other character I really want to talk about is, the man himself, Sebastian. Crazy how he probably had the most screen time and dialogue of all the characters in the game, and he doesn't even appear in the final battle. He's a very ride-or-die character, and I was really hoping that his prejudice would overwhelm him and he would try to face off against Ranrock himself, because he doesn't know that it's Victor who cursed Anne until after the battle. Sebastian also got a full character arc and had a direct investment into the main story, despite his entire saga being independent. Honestly, I would have been more positive about this section and characters in general if both Natsai and Poppy got the same treatment, but I just didn't feel the same way for them. Natsai was a self-inserting character into a conflict with Harlow, who is a very forgettable antagonist that appears once in the main story. If honestly Natsai didn't even mention him again, I probably would have forgotten about him. Poppy's arc though was actually a neat story that I enjoyed quite a lot. It was self-contained outside the main story and expanded on pre-existing lore and factions that we already knew about, like the Ashwinders, Centaurs, and the Beast. I thought that this was a perfect example of how each of our classmates should have been handled, but I guess a lot of the content ideas in this title did get scrapped for some reason. Overall, the game makes it clear that it's designed to be a single-player experience where your interactions with characters are meant to be fleeting with a focus on exploring the world. Speaking of the world, the Highlands is your playing ground the moment you finish getting sorted into your respective house. The game soft scales with you as each region has its level thresholds, but honestly it's not really a barrier, and I could have probably clean sweep the map of collectibles in about 10 hours if I was playing this off camera, if it wasn't for those locks. In regards to locks actually, it's not really worth exploring the world until you acquire about 80% of the spells due to them being required to solve several cave or Merlin activities. I wasn't that demotivated by this since the special assignments were so easy that I was acquiring about 2 to 3 new spells for every main story I completed in the early game. What really annoyed me actually was searching for those moons, but thankfully the world map does a very detailed job at breaking down specifically where your missable collectibles are at. Combat is by far the game's highest point, which carries this title relative to its poor presentation of story and characters. There are 26 castable spells that you can use to interact, destroy, create, or be a menace with. 16 of these spells are combat orientated and can be used in creative combinations for cool executions. The most common and effective ones I kept using were the Glacius to Defendo and Accio to Descendo. I also had a lot of fun transforming weaker enemies into explosives and launching them into stronger mobs. Despite the selection of spells that you can use and combine in a fight, it felt relatively intuitive rather than overwhelming, which was a great feeling. The spell set seamlessly enables quick swapping on multiple spells, allowing you to put your combinations into the same category. Overall, I think this was a very well-crafted system with stylish animations, and each spell had its own usefulness. The Unforgiving Curses are the unique category and most overpowered spells, which I found myself, in fact, not really using that much. The reason why is because they have long cooldowns and how quick the overworld battles were though. They're meant to be spells that you can use at the start of a fight and get the advantage on, as they have no organic combination with any normal spells, so on higher difficulties their utility is quite appreciated. They really do absolutely destroy the difficulty of this game though, as the talent additive effects enable the curse effect to be applied and spread through normal spells, which can be a kill command when you hit your... It feels really impactful to have these in game though, as it's true to their title of Unforgiving. Additionally, there are potions and herbological summons, which are your combat utility functions in the game. I didn't really use them, and if I did, it was because I would misclick the L1 button when trying to open the quick menu. On higher difficulties, I can see them being useful for dragged out fights, but I've never really been a consumables player in the first place. Next is gear, which is all RNG and very simple to understand as there is only one stat on each piece of equipment. This is a case of bigger number is always better. Similarly to the world scaling with you, this also includes all gear that you discover or purchase, which is nice. Players also don't have to worry about hoarding gear since you unlock appearances by simply acquiring them once. In fact, appearances go beyond yourself and can also customize your wand handle, mount, broom, and your whole pocket dimension with complementary house elf. The freedom of this selection is quite expansive, and this is where I believe the game's care and focus went into. And that's all I got on Hogwarts Legacy, a not so long video on a not so long open world. I have to say, the compactness of this game is 100% its strength, and the world feels more focused rather than overwhelming and bloated, which I believe the developers did a great job on. There's a lot, of course, that can be expanded on, like the open world activities and the relationship quests, so I'm hopeful that this game will be a good blueprint for a potential sequel.